karena sa bukod, pinapalaki sa lahat ng dito.
Media educators are warning called to defend press freedom.
This corruption in media will be reduced to
It's been nearly 2 months since the onslaught of Typhoon Yolanda. Relief efforts from the government, private sector, and international communities have been pouring for the survivors of the super typhoon. But now, the real work begins. Just last week, the president appointed former Senator Ping Lacson as the rehabilitation czar for the areas affected by the super typhoon, marking the beginning of the rehabilitation phase so that the survivors can regain their lives, livelihood, and sense of normalcy. Government, private sectors, non-government, and international agencies are overseeing the rebuilding of homes and schools. However, providing these structures are not enough, as most survivors have expressed that they need work in order to survive, and that relief goods can only sustain them for a short period of time. That is where Oplan Trabaho comes in. Oplan Trabaho is comprised by the same group of private citizens who volunteered to drive survivors who came to Manila to live with their relatives residing in the area via Oplan Hatid. The objective of Oplan Trabaho is to provide jobs and opportunities to these survivors before Christmas.
So after 2 weeks of doing Villamor and taking people home, it seemed a little wrong to just wash our hands and put the problem on someone else's doorstep. So we came up with phase 2, which was Oplan Trabaho. Basically, the goal is to put 5,000 people into work before Christmas. With the work of volunteers and some miracles, we decided to just go through our social networks again, ask our volunteers, listen, if you have a job, big or small, it doesn't matter, offer it to one of the survivors. If they need government papers, our government are right behind us, and we have NBI, SSS, PhilHealth, DOLE. So some people lost this in the flood, so they can complete that here. Tent number 2 is full of employers, and they're already told, based upon the skills, you should be able to go to tent 2. There's a place looking for 35 drivers. There's a place. We know this through the system. And then we guide them towards there. They sit down, they have a face-to-face interview, and then after that, they're hired on the spot. Tent number 3 are individuals, people who are kasambahay or drivers or gardeners in their own house. These are not corporations. So if they don't make it there, they can go to tent 3. If that's their skill and qualification, they move on over there, and then they get interviewed. If you like the person, hire them on the spot.
Many companies partnered with Oplan Trabaho and opened their doors, giving work opportunities.
We have 150 because we're representing a call center company and they're ramping up. So we really need a lot of people. We have minimal qualifications for call center agents. So you don't have to have an experience, but you have to have good English communication skills.
Kasi nung nakita kong dinadala dito yung mga na-displace, sabi ko rin, anong gagawin nilang lahat? I'm really looking for people to hire, driver and kasambahay. And I think I've found what I'm looking for. Overall, masipag talaga, tsaka mahal yung trabaho, tsaka gustong magtrabaho, hindi yung namimili.
True to their goal, Oplan Trabaho was able to pave the way for survivor applicants to get work from the one-day job fair.
Sinabihan kami ni ma'am doon ng taga-DSWD na merong ina-offer nila na job fair. Kaya kami pumunta dito para mag-ano ng trabaho. Ito ngayon, na-hired kami. Nagpasalamat talaga kami sobrang-sobra. Binigyan kami ng damit, kung ano-ano pagkain, kung basta sobrang-sobra. Sobrang-sobra.
Aside from providing work opportunities, Oplan Trabaho also gave out clothes for the newly hired to have something to wear for work, food, SIM cards, seminars and training, and a counseling area for the children.
jobs, I just want to say the biggest, most heartfelt thank you to all the volunteers, donors, and everyone who helped make this possible. I mean, we are just little cogs in the machine, a very big machine that has turned out 5,000 jobs, and we cannot thank you enough.
With the combined efforts of both private and public sectors, local and international, it is without a doubt that the provinces in the Visayas will bounce back to its normal, if not a better state.
Good evening. You are watching News Cafe on the Solar News Channel. Sitting in for Jing Magsaysay, I'm Mitzi Borromeo. In times of crisis, we have learned that disaster victims cannot rely entirely on relief goods provided by the government and by the private sector. To achieve a true sense of normalcy and improve lives for the long term, rehabilitation efforts should go hand in hand with relief efforts. Here with us tonight are representatives from organizations that are committed to helping Typhoon Yolanda victims get back on their feet. Joining me now is Architect Felino Palafox, Principal Architect Urban Planner of Palafox Associates and President of the Philippine Institute for Environmental Planners. Good evening, Architect Palafox, and thank you for being here.
Good evening, Ms. Michi, and glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity to share.
Well, you're a very busy man. Recently, you have been appointed, or you're being called on as a consultant to help with rehabilitation efforts by the Rehabilitation Czar, Panfilo Lacson. How is that going?
Yeah, I'm not officially appointed, and the day before he decided to accept the role, he consulted me if I'm willing to help him, and I set a couple of conditions. Number one, no corruption. Number two, transparency, accountability, and good governance. Thirdly, no band-aid solutions. We should look at the immediate action, short-term, medium-term, and long-term. And the crisis created an opportunity to build back, replan, remake, rebuild, safer, smarter, and more sustainable cities of the future.
Well, it's a big task ahead, isn't it? And I understand you're flying out on Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th, yeah.
Yes, you're doing an ocular inspection.
Yeah, Senator Ping Lacson invited me to fly with them. And I was just in Tacloban last week also on my own initiative.
So what are preparations like right now? How do you prepare for a magnitude, a size, gravity, a great situation of this magnitude?
Yeah. My first conversation with Senator Lacson on that November 30 Saturday night was, we need to have a Douglas MacArthur with a Marshall Plan. Douglas MacArthur, the recovery of Japan, and Marshall Plan, recovery of Europe. We should get inspiration from Hiroshima, Japan. It was bombed, under 30,000 people got killed. Then a few months after, it got hit by the worst typhoon.
It's a typhoon also, yes.
And then they declared Hiroshima as a global city for world peace against atomic bomb. And I was also saying, previous interview by BBC, that Tacloban should be declared as a global center for climate change, which is probably the first city worst hit by climate change. So a lot of discussion. Yesterday morning, we have a charrette. We call that charrette brainstorming on architecture, engineering, urban planning in my office. And a lot of ideas were put forward from me and the rest of my staffers, and Professor Danny Antonio, management consultant. And it's really, I think one of the biggest challenges will be the bureaucracy.
Right.
So Senator P. Lacson would be depending also on the private sector. So this is probably a public-private partnership, and we need to come out with a platform for collaboration. There's so many international agencies involved, national, local, interfaith. It's so, when I was in Tacloban, I really felt it was so heart-wrenching. I felt the pain, the suffering, and death. And the upside of it, the resilience of the people, children smiling and laughing, offering accommodations, the people there. I chose to stay with the Chuchi volunteers from Taiwan and 31 other countries. And a lot of lessons to be learned. And for instance, the building code, it required only 220 kilometers per hour.
Yes.
And the speed of the Super Typhoon Yolanda was 320 kilometers per hour. That's the speed of a jumbo jet landing. And
they say a bullet train also.
Bullet train. And we flew over it. The buildings that were roof deck, concrete roof deck, they were not destroyed. Roof that are dos aguas, just the 2 slopes, they were blown away. The cuatro aguas, the 4 slopes, they stayed more. And the shape of buildings, like the arena, is round.
Like a dome, yes.
A dome, it survived. And then, so we are proposing in our office, and we'd like to share with the other architects, engineers, that part of the design now should have aerodynamics. And like some buildings we have designed, let's say in Rockwell, the result tower is round. When we did a wind tunnel analysis, it's the safest against wind. So not just for the disaster areas now, we should apply it to the rest of the country. And a lot of lessons to be learned. And public buildings like public schools, they're normally our refugee areas.
Evacuation
centers. And I think everybody now should be a whistleblower. Contractors, suppliers, and consultants. If corruption was involved, they should now expose, maybe talk to the Secretary of Public Works for the first structural audit. Because corruption kills.
Yes.
If there's corruption involved, where did the contractor take out the 20% kickback, the 30% kickback? Is it from the steel bars or the concrete mix? So we can save more lives. And a lot of lessons to be learned, best practices in the world, and lessons learned from mistakes made. Even, I'm not finger pointing here because I had experience working in other disaster areas. First thing to be done is rescue and recovery.
Yes.
Then the relief.
Right.
Then the rehab, reconstruction, replanning, remaking, rebuilding.
We kind of missed the rescue.
I think
and
we
recovery.
failed the rescue. We assume already that people are dead anyway. And we could have saved more lives who are under the rubble. And then elsewhere in the world, like Aceh, Indonesia, first hour, the government commandeered all bulldozers, private and government, to clear the streets. And then we are a group of islands. Maybe somebody should have asked the shipping lines, the fishing boats in Nabotas and Malabon, maybe even the smugglers, how to land in an island. It took the U.S. Navy to tell us landing a ship is the best way to access. And one bright spot also, the San Juanico Bridge, is intact. It was designed by Filipinos, built by Filipinos. And the more recently built infrastructure got destroyed.
Right.
The more recently built schools and other government buildings got destroyed more immediately.
So in planning for sustainable cities, you really have to work with the environment.
Yeah.
You're looking at and it's unique to every setting because you've worked also in other countries.
Other countries, I've done work in 38 countries, and I'm sorry to say they listen more to me than in my own country.
Why is that? What are we missing here?
It took a Ping Lacson to recognize, that's why I call it patriotic architecture for humanity, what we're doing now. And
it is.
I think there's a colonial mentality in our country. West is best, foreign is better, imported is better than local. And Filipinos are recognized in more than 200 countries, more countries than members of the United Nations. Unfortunately, in our own country, I even got insulted by the deputy presidential spokesperson as an alarmist when I kept sending, because Pinoy said, kayo ang boss ko.
Yes.
So I keep sending recommendations, even if there are no thank you letters. I keep sending, because we might be able to save more lives.
Right.
And maybe this collaboration now, architects, engineers, planners, the business community, other professional organizations, we come together and just do it.
Yeah.
With coordination and committees, it will suffer from analysis paralysis. Just do it and share the information.
Right. Well, there seems to be a proposal now for a Department of Emergency. So what are your thoughts on how, is this to replace the NDR?
Yes, like the FEMA, the
Yes,
Federal
like
Emergency Management
the United
Authority
States.
in the U.S. It's good, but it might create another bureaucracy. So yes and no.
Yeah.
And like Senator Lacson, he was appointed just now officially as rehabilitation czar, rehab
Yes.
czar.
Yes.
And people are talking already about his meets and bounds, what he should not do. And he hasn't started yet officially. And I just saw in the Solar News waiting that he was officially appointed.
Right, right.
And probably he will call me later because he wants to hit the ground running.
You need a plan of action.
A plan of
Right.
action
Yes,
and
yes.
strategy and so on.
Yeah.
But committee and coordination should not exist in the
'Cause that's where the
vocabulary.
bureaucracy
Because committee, coordination, it will slow down. Maybe we should just be like Nike shoes now. Just do
Just
it.
do it.
Just do it, then inform.
What would be your first priorities? What do you think has to be
A
done
lot of
right
things. So
away?
immediate action right now is maybe we have disaster tourism now. The airport remain dilapidated. Maybe some people, generous souls may want to repaint the airport, put more electric fans, put even just plastic chairs so tourists and travelers have something to sit on, fix the toilet. So that's your introduction to Tacloban if you go there.
Yes. Yes.
And there are so many tourists or volunteers coming over. Number two is slaughterhouse. Because when you're there, you don't feel like eating because you might be eating a double dead food.
yeah.
Maybe distribution center for food, fruits and vegetables and fish. And then evacuation area. Elsewhere in the world, internationally, the international standards, 1 square meter for every resident. So if Tacloban has 300,000 people, we should have 30,000 square meters evacuation area, 10,000 square meters, 1 hectare. So maybe we should have 3 evacuation areas, 10 hectares each, which should have emergency clinic, emergency water station, emergency food station, emergency shelter,
Right.
emergency telecommunications command center, emergency fire trucks, police, ambulances,
Yes.
and then emergency helipad. Even our richest LGUs here, they don't have that. And these emergency evacuation areas should be disaster-proof, high
Right.
ground, not liable to flooding or earthquake fault lines. And these are there are several immediate, the no-build zone, I'd rather call it danger zone. Because you say no-build
People
zone.
will pay more attention.
No,
Yeah.
because the no-build zone, the first violators will be national government buildings. The central bank, the PNP, all national government buildings are in that 40 meters.
Yes.
And I would even recommend that 50 meters, 150-foot high water mark. Pacific Islands like Hawaii, they have 150-foot high water mark setback or 50 meters. And then more importantly, the vertical clearance
Yes.
for livable floors. Let's say if you build in an area that's liable to flooding, maybe 2 floors above the flood lines. Like your bedroom, if you have 6-meter flooding, maybe your bedroom should be 8 meters high above ground. That I call that adaptive architecture.
Yes.
Mitigation measures, airport and seaport, those are the gateways into Tacloban. Let's look at mitigation measures like mangroves or reclamation around and seawalls to protect it.
To avoid the flooding.
And then the seaports as well, because Tacloban is a gateway city. It says the airport and the seaport. And of course, there are 3 kinds of infrastructure. Progressive infrastructure, these are the airports, the seaports, international schools, international hospitals, and so on. Hard infrastructure, that's what you know, the roads and the utilities. More importantly, soft infrastructure. These are the ease of doing business.
Yes.
The government should be the enabler, not the obstacle.
And even in other places besides Tacloban, because you're saying that when we do urban planning, we should keep disaster preparedness in mind, right? All over the
Yeah.
Philippines. And
The more than 100 recommendations I've been putting forward to address hazards before they become disasters.
yes.
So it's more preventive through architecture, urban planning, and engineering. And even the word disaster preparedness, it's like given already that disaster will happen because we are not addressing the hazards. There are 18 kinds of disasters, 8 natural and 10 man-made. The one in Zamboanga is man-made, terrorism and so on. That's
Yes.
man-made disaster. Or oil spills, these are man-made
Right.
disasters. And we're now addressing the natural disasters, Super Typhoon Yolanda. But
Yes.
of course, we should not forget the Bohol earthquake and the Zamboanga.
Right. Well, this is now what scientists have been warning us about 10, 15 years ago, climate change impacts. And we're
Yeah.
feeling it through these extreme weather events. How do we prepare the Philippines for more extreme weather events like this? I mean, what are the, all over this, let's say, even in Manila after Ondoy, no? And other parts of the Philippines, how can we prepare for this kind of
Yeah.
situation?
I think change in paradigms because we, architects, urban planners, engineers, geologists, we're second class in this country. The first class are the politicians and the lawyers, with due respect.
Yes.
I think we should listen to the experts now.
Yes.
And it takes a disasters to remind people that they're experts in different fields.
Right.
That's one. And then, of course, reviewing our obsolete planning, zoning, and building
Building
codes.
zone. Yes, yes.
Yeah, and all the architects, engineers, scientists, we are all willing to help. And maybe we can come up together with a modern code, learning from best practices elsewhere in the world that are similarly situated. Like the high-rise buildings that Palafox Associates get to with architects and engineers, we borrow some of the best provisions in the building code of California, Taiwan, Chile, and Japan.
Yes.
We borrow them. Over and above our minimum standards in the Philippines are substandard. I'm sorry to say that. A lot of obsolete laws in our codes. Another one that maybe is non-technical. You saw the international aid going into
Yes,
Tacloban.
so much has been
So these
given
lessons
to
from
us.
international aid, maybe we can change it to international trade. Right. Let's open up the country. In fact, I had proposals before. Make the whole Philippines a free port. Like Dubai, where I was part of the planning of Dubai. For every citizen of Dubai, there are 10 jobs available. I think Hong Kong is the same. In our country, it's the reverse. For every job possible, available, there are 10 Filipinos competing. So we open up even at the playing field. And I think this has been a blessing, a wake-up call. And what I saw also in Tacloban is we have a family of nations serving under one God. I hope we Filipinos, one nation under one God.
Well, that's a good message for all of us tonight. And much luck and all the best to you on your work. It's a big task you have ahead of us. So thank you for all you've been doing and good luck.
Yeah,
thank you for being with us tonight, Architect Palafox.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
And thank you again for all the viewers for watching. Let's take a short break. News Cafe will return after these messages. You're still watching News Cafe, and we are now joined by Rory Fajardo, Project Manager of the Citizen Action Network for Accountability, or CANA. Good evening, and thank you for being with us tonight.
Good evening, Mitzi, and good evening to all our televiewers of News Cafe.
So to start off, please tell us a little about CANA. What is this all about?
Okay, CANA is a new project which is being implemented by 4 media development organizations. So briefly, I could tell you it's involved there is the Institute for War and Peace Reporting, the Center for Community Journalism and Development, the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines, and the Mindanao. So simply, we want to help citizens, not only the media professionals, to be able to help our local governments to become more transparent and accountable by using the latest media technologies that we have, the social media, the Twitter, and crowdsourcing. So we want to make sure that citizens have these capacities to use the social media to tell our government that, hey, we're here, we're watching.
And there's so much information going around also for citizens. It's hard to filter out the good from the bad.
Yes, that's right. That's why here in Citizen Action Network for Accountability, we as a professional journalists we are trying to help train the citizens to acquire these media skills so that, of course, when we want to, let's say, expose any issue, we have to practice what the journalists are practicing. It has to be verified, it has to be accurate, there should be balance, of course, and there should also be fairness when we want to come out with issues.
So what exactly is your objective with CANA? Is it then to really train citizens and other media practitioners with media skills?
Yes, citizens, which also includes the media, and then we want to train them and to organize them to better engage the government, whether from the local government or from the national government. So right now, we're present in around 28 provinces in the Philippines. We are trying to help build, we call it citizen action groups. So it's composed of both local journalists and also students, teachers who are interested and very much committed to make their governments clean And so they're coming together, and then we give them training, we help them support, we give them support in, let's say, developing their own websites or Facebook accounts, so that they could use this to spread more information about what their governments are doing, whether good or bad, and also get the message across that we are citizens. We are here to help you, not necessarily to always lambast you or bring out just the negative aspects.
So it's giving people a voice.
Yes,
isn't it?
that's right.
Because I think the value of communications is often undervalued, no? So there's a lot of power through media.
Of course.
Yeah.
And we believe in Canada, we believe that the more the citizens know and understand how our governments are working, the better we are able to engage them. It's not only just that we just tell them, oh, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, but we know how they work, and necessarily we would be able to know what's lacking, what they missed, and what else they could do with us.
So in the case now of the Typhoon Yolanda victims and the work that's going on to help them, what is Canada doing in that regard?
That's a good question, Mitzi. As we all know, all of us got really off guard with what happened. And I, for one, I felt so personal with this issue because I have friends and close colleagues who are there, who are among the first responders in Leyte. Immediately after, in the aftermath of Yolanda, our specific organizations, the developers or the implementers of CANA, we responded through also through relief. Most of our colleagues in the media were also among those who were really affected. As we all know, News by Now has already told us that some of them were the casualties, and all the media structures, the facilities got really wiped out. So there's no, the communication was cut off. And in times of crisis, in times of disaster, communication is really very important. So immediately what we did is that we had some members, we had some colleagues who went there and who tried to locate our colleagues. And from then on, we also made some efforts to do initial data gathering on which we also shared not only to the media communities here, but also to the CSOs, civil society workers, aid workers who are trying to do some work there. And we are also happy that, you know, colleagues from international community, the wires, they understood that our appeal that, you know, we had a lot of journalists who didn't have any work that time. So you saw the deluge of international media coming, and so some of them tapped the local journalists to be their guide, to be their local counterpart. So some sort, they also supported the media to have an immediate or interim job to support their families. But we said that relief, like what others are saying, relief is just one part, and the bigger task is the recovery. There will have already been predictions that it will take 10 years or more. And so the Citizen Action Network for Accountability believes that we have a moral responsibility in this issue. So now what we are doing is that we are leading some initiatives from citizens to make sure that the money that is being committed or poured in right now, whether from the national government and from the international communities, we are making sure that, or we have certain steps to make sure that this really goes to where it goes. There's not a centavo being spent for other reasons, because we had some information in previous experiences, like in Typhoon Sendong and Pablo in southern Philippines, that there were a lot of support, but the people said not much, they didn't get much from, and there's not much accounting on that.
Even now, there are reports that some of the aid coming from the UK is not actually going to the people who need them. So how do you check that these funds are actually going to the right places?
Okay, right now what we are doing is using the tools that we have right now. There are some groups who are already working, like I have to mention, I have to to acknowledge like people from blogging community, the Blog Watch. We are working together they started this open source.
Yes.
So you could, everybody who has information about the support, the financial support and the donations that's coming in for Yolanda recovery. So there's a crowdsourcing being done right now. So anybody could access, anybody could also share with the information. And then we are also trying to look into possibilities to have some sort of an online portal where everybody could share the photos, videos, and post Yolanda information, which will be very crucial to everybody working to help in the recovery. Right now, what we are really concerned with is because we already have some means in tracking what is coming in. The more important thing now, Mitzi, is that how are these funds going to be used?
Yes.
It's like a call for us to become some sort of become an auditor.
Right.
So are the funds being used accordingly? Are these funds being used to, or do the services match the needs of the people? That's why we also see here the very important aspect of feedback from the communities. Right
Yes.
now, we have links with communities, with journalists on the ground, and they are the ones who are very instrumental. They're instrumental in helping us get information. What's really happening there? Are there really support coming in? What kind of support?
And you're sure that they're not rumors, right?
Yes,
when
that's
these
right.
reports come in through CANA, you know that they have been
Yes.
vetted.
And yeah, we have to vet it, and we have to really verify it. We could not just put it or publish it without any verification.
What difficulties do you encounter? I mean, sometimes on the ground it can
Yes.
be very difficult to get this information, or maybe resource people are not willing to speak all the time. What do you think the biggest challenges are for your group?
The biggest challenge right now, I think, is also the same biggest challenge right now to all the aid workers there and even the government, that the communication line is still not yet 100% restored. So you could imagine in this age, this internet age,
Yes.
my friends back in Tacloban, our colleagues there, we just text, let's say, once a day, because they have to save their power, and then they have to line up for just to charge their phones and their salvaged computers. So that's one. Second is there's also not, although the government now is, in fact, it has opened up a portal for the number or the how the donations are coming in. The challenge there is how to make the people understand this information. So when you say aid, when you say pledges, what does it mean? When you say commitments from the international organizations, does it mean that they really give money? And we have some information that, in fact, the Department of Foreign Affairs is saying that when you say pledge, it doesn't mean that the money is already in. It's just a pledge. And then along the way, there will still be a lot of changes. And in the recent roundtable that we had last week, we had a roundtable discussion wherein more than 100 people from different sectors shared their views on the importance to monitor the funds. Some are saying that there is still a lot of stage in monitoring because, let's say, a certain country or a certain institution gives 100% of the funds, not all goes, because others go to
there are other costs.
yes, other costs, operating expenses,
yes.
and sad to say, like, there's this one Dutch volunteer who said that 3 to 5% of the funds donated by the Dutch people, that's the only percentage
that actually reaches
yes,
the people.
so that's one challenge. We really have to have the tools, the people on the ground, and then the real-time sharing of information. We know we have, of course, we credit the Commission on Audit right now. relatively, their audit reports are faster. But in this situation, we cannot afford to have audit reports which is 1 or 2 years after. We should have a real-time reporting.
Yes.
We should have real-time updates on what's happening because people's lives are at stake here.
Exactly.
And as you could see, 1 month after, we are still counting bodies. We still don't have complete information on how long and how much will it take to have reconstruction.
Yes. Well, the government recently launched the Foreign Aid Transparency
Yes.
Hub, or FAITH. What do you think about that? Will this help with current efforts and transparency and auditing and monitoring?
Okay, I have to say, and I think some of the groups are also saying that this is a good move, and probably this is a result of the pressure of the people, especially from the netizens. If you could see, Mitzi, the pulse of the people, the netizens, days after Yolanda, they were saying that, oh, we should really make sure that people will guard the money, otherwise we would, this would go somewhere else. So that's one good move. But we are always saying, we say that this is not enough. Okay, so this is just a portal, and the challenge there, as we always say, is that how to translate this into information that the communities will really understand. So, like I said, 90 or almost 100% of the affected communities are still without electricity.
Right.
They're not wired. They're not. And so, how will they know that the government information, which says that these will really go to them, will, this will really be used in their way. So that's really a challenge. And second, another challenge is that, as I said before, is that we should have an update, fast updates on the information. So like last week, we checked on the hub, the FAITH, so it's still not updated, and we have to have frequent and very quick updates on this.
Yes. Well, now it's 1 month on, but let's say 1 year on, what was Canada hope to achieve, specifically with regards to the Typhoon Yolanda work? What are you hoping to at least have done later? I know it's a big task ahead. Now there's a lot of work, but what are we gearing towards?
We hope that the story of reconstruction of Yolanda will be a pride for the Filipinos. It really breaks my heart whenever I see stories that that is saying that funds which came from the other international groups or other countries are seen in malls. So it really breaks my heart. It's not our pride as a Filipino is at stake here. So 1 year from now, we from CANA and also the other groups that we are working with, like Blogwatch, Disaster Risk Reduction Network Philippines, and Aid Monitor PH, we want to show that people power worked here, and because of people power, no centavo was abused, not a single centavo was pocketed, and all went to the communities who really suffered so much after Yolanda. So that's what that is what we envision. And just to add, Mitzi, one of the most devastated sectors during that time was the media. And I really salute our media colleagues there. And I said, if I were in their position, I really don't know how to start, because everything was, ground zero.
Yeah.
But now they're helping build their communities one by one, and they're back on their feet just a day after. In fact, they're texting us after 5 days and saying that we need jobs, and we will share information, just tell us what to do. So I really salute our media community there.
Well, that's a wonderful note to end on. If there's one thing the Filipinos are good at, it's people power and resiliency.
Yes.
Thank you for all your work, and more power to your group.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rory.
Okay.
Well, thanks again for being with us today. Let's take another short break. News Cafe will return after these reminders. You're still watching News Cafe on the Solar News Channel. And joining me right now is Dabs Liban, Marketing Director for Habitat for Humanity. Good evening, Dabs.
Good evening, Mitzi.
Thank you for being here. Now, we're all quite familiar with Habitat for Humanity. Please tell us a little about it and what we do in the Philippines.
Well, Habitat for Humanity exists because not everyone has a decent place to live. Having said that, our main vision, our main passion is to provide access for everyone to have a decent place.
Yes.
A shelter.
So in the Philippines, you've been around for how many years now?
It's now our 25th anniversary, actually.
Wow. And how many homes have you built? How many people have you reached?
At least 54,000, I think 55,000 families have been given shelter.
Amazing. So basically, what you advocate here in the Philippines?
Yeah, we are advocating to give a shelter to very poor families, but even for the not so poor. For example, public school teachers,
Right.
they have the capacity to pay, but nobody's actually giving them access to shelter. So we signed this MOA with DepEd. Habitat is going to give them housing.
Excellent.
Every city, every province.
Yes. Well, of course, right now, with all the destruction from Typhoon Yolanda, there's a lot of work that you're doing. Tell us a little about the projects you're
Well, actually, on day 3, I was already sent. I actually volunteered to go to Northern Cebu and met with the volunteers, and so that on day 4, we were already distributing shelter repair kits in the islets of Bantayan Island, Northern Cebu.
What are these repair kits? What does it consist of?
It contains roofing materials, mainly GI sheets, plain sheet, assorted lumber, marine plywood, hammer, and saw, and assorted nails. It can actually provide 2 things. Either you repair your destroyed homes or build a new one.
Okay, and this can withstand, I mean, let's say even when the elements are coming.
Oh, no. It's just for temporary shelter.
Right.
So while the families are still waiting for the government
Right.
to provide them the permanent shelter, they can have something to place, some place to live in.
And so you were preparing for Typhoon Yolanda then
Yes.
for quite a while.
Yeah.
Did you were you able to prepare enough kits? With the impact of the typhoon.
That's a good thing because I think in just 5 days, we were able to raise a lot of money just using Facebook.
Wow.
And people, I think it happened on a Friday.
Yes.
On Saturday, we started the Facebook campaign. People were just pouring in and giving a lot of donations through Facebook, and it became viral. So that on the 10th day, we were able to provide substantial assistance already to several islets and islands of Cebu.
So how do you carry out your work? Do you work with governments and also non-government organizations?
Yes. Our main strategy is, of course, to use volunteers. So when I went to Cebu, I engaged the nuns of the Daughters of Charity, a group of pastors, and some parishioners. And they became our volunteers and going to Northern Cebu and the islands of Bantayan Island.
Right. Must be a challenge, we're in the immediate aftermath of a disaster. It's a challenge getting coordination done. What were the biggest challenges for you?
Well, logistics. It's one of the biggest challenges. For example, mainly because of there is a certain rise of disaster tourism. But in a lot of family level type of fundraising, they would raise funds for let's say 200 families, or 30 families, or 20 families, and they would bring in 20 cars, 30 cars to visit certain areas. And it clogs the main thoroughfares. So for example, for Habitat for Humanity, we were intending to bring shelter repair kits for 1,000 families, but we cannot actually go there because the line is about 2 or 3 kilometers long, and we need to wait for our turn to ride in the ferry boats.
Yeah.
And even if you reach the Bantayan Island in Northern Cebu, there were no pump boats. So we actually paddled our way from one islet to another. So instead of distributing 500 repair kits in one day, we only get to finish 113 in one islet. And we literally paddled, I think, 15, 20 times back and forth to bring the plastic sheetings for roofing materials.
It's very interesting because this is the downside of individual volunteerism. People think that, hey, I'm going to give my own little donation, but actually, when you work through bigger groups, that's probably more efficient.
That's right. That's right.
So you have also been working in other areas apart from Tacloban. I mean, you've been involved in Zamboanga,
Yeah.
of course, the earthquake in Bohol. Tell us a little about that.
Yeah, in fact, before Zamboanga, we've been doing houses in Sendong, in Cagayan de Oro, and also some parts of ARM, that's in Basilan, Suluy, Tawi-Tawi. And then Zamboanga happened. And after that, 1 month later, Bohol. So we were building houses also in Bohol, in Zamboanga also, and even temporary hospitals in Bohol when Yolanda came. So when Yolanda came, we were pretty stretched already.
Yeah.
So I was a one-man team in Cebu when we started the distribution, but now we have a good-sized team in all over Visayas.
How does it compare? I mean, obviously it's different working in these different contexts. Are the kits the same and also dealing with the different local governments there?
We have doubled the contents. For example, it's different because in the case of Yolanda, everything is gone. So it's basically almost starting all over again, but you do not know where to start. So, for example, when we drove from Javier, that's the southern part of Leyte, up to the northern part, that's Tacloban, it's a 4-hour drive, and the scene is basically the same. We noticed that most of the houses having the two-sided roof, that's called Dos Aguas, they were easily flipped by Typhoon Yolanda. And we noticed also that the four-sided...
yes, as architect Palafox
oh,
said
really?
earlier.
Four-sided roofing, it's called Cuatro Aguas. Many of them survived. Some were also blown away, but at least more houses with that kind of roofing survived. And we also noticed the pitch, if the housing or the roofing design is at least 30 degrees or even more, they survive the high winds.
Yes.
So I think we need to be adaptive because we cannot change our country. We are directly facing Pacific Ocean. Areas, communities facing that area should at least do that kind of adaptive architecture.
Right.
And we also noticed that roof with extended overhang, they got flipped very easily. Okay. So we need to shorten the overhang, and then the pitch should be higher.
Yes.
And those are some of just the suggestions that we can be prepared for.
I think many of the architects and urban planners are learning this.
Yes.
And of course, there is a lot of cooperation with government needed. What is your experience in cooperating with the government?
Well, it's, for example, we've been ready to start building houses last week. But we need to wait for the government to really say, okay, this is going to be the parameters. For example, the existing building code says 220 kph. But I think Yolanda is above 300 kph. So we need to wait for a more reasonable parameters.
Yes.
Because if we, for example, start building using the existing parameters, it's difficult.
And it's changing, isn't it?
It's changing.
Yes.
Pacific Ocean has it's known for beating its own record. It used to be only 10 meters away from the shoreline. That's the danger zone. In Sendong, it became 20 meters, and then Pablo, 40 meters. But after this, Yolanda, it drove even up to half a kilometer inland.
The storm surge just
Storm surge
really
is different,
caught everybody off guard. Yeah. What is the difference in, you were in Bohol, and it's been how many months now, and then right now it's a month after Yolanda. How long will Habitat for Humanity be in those communities? What is your commitment?
Our commitment, for example, for Yolanda is to repair up to 30,000 houses, build up to 30,000 houses also, and provide cleaning kits for up to 50,000. That's about 100,000 families benefiting from that response. As for Bohol, we're committed also to help at least 10,000 homes in Bohol. We have already started building 2,000 shelters in Bohol using different kinds of technology, because in Bohol, compared to Yolanda, the earthquake actually shattered the walls, not the roofing material. But for Yolanda, it's basically the roof.
Yeah.
So for Bohol, it's different. We have
kits.
We have different kits, and also the design. We have strengthened the wall, and for Yolanda, we're providing solution for the roof. Yes.
What about in places like Zamboanga? And that's a different
It's a
situation
different.
also.
For example, the Bajau tribe.
Yes.
there's actually a law that you cannot force them to leave their ancestral home. That is the water. So we're building houses on stilts.
Ah, okay.
So it's a different design also for them.
Yes. So this is a big learning curve as well for Habitat for Humanity International, because
Yes.
you're working in different areas around the world, aren't you?
That's right.
Yeah. So what are the next steps right now in typhoon, because of the typhoon Yolanda experience? What do you think we'll be seeing in the next few months?
I think we'll soon start building houses.
Yeah.
Permanent shelter, not just repair kits.
Yes.
I think it's very important for us to build permanent shelters the right way.
Right.
Build better in right places. Because before it's just about three things. First, it's the design, and then the materials that you use, and then third, it's the execution. But the fourth one now is also important, the place. Even if you have all those three, if you build it near the shoreline, it's
Right.
going to be washed away by storm surges.
So you have to build with the environment in mind, no?
Yes, so that's one. And at the same time, I think we need not just prepare for relief goods. We need to address the root causes of the problem. It's not just preparation, but mitigation.
Yes.
So building the right way.
Right. Now, many people still want to help. How can they help through Habitat for Humanity?
Well, we have our web page and our giving portal through our Facebook. The best way and easiest way is to visit Habitat's Facebook account.
Okay.
And then we have a giving portal at that Facebook account.
Okay, well, thank you very much for all you're doing, and more power to your group. And take care as you travel throughout the Philippines.
Thank you so much, Mitzi.
Thank you, Dabs. Now, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks to all our guests for being here tonight. Join us again next Thursday for another round of discussion here on News Cafe. Sitting in for Jing Magsaysay, I'm Mitzi Borromeo. Good night.
Sa karon sa bukod, tingnan pa na sa lahat ng